Today is February 12th, and our reflections are about what happens when we slow down enough to actually feel our lives instead of trying to control or explain them away. We'll look at curiosity instead of judgment, longing instead of lack, and how shame-based spirituality keeps people disconnected from themselves, and that affects their relationship with others. Hi, I'm Candy. I'm a hypnotherapist who's deconstructing from evangelical Christianity, and I know how mindset shapes our behavior. So in this series, I'm going to share my daily reflections from 3 different devotionals. The Book of Awakening by Mark Nepo, and that one's a little more spiritual, non-religious. Also, Jesus Calling by Sarah Young, which is a very modern Christian approach. And My Utmost for His Highest by Oswald Chambers, which is a very classic Christian angle. My goal is to help you see how each one of these devotionals or these day books might shape your mindset a little differently. And if you're into that kind of reflection, please like and follow for more. Let's get started. Today, for February 12th, in the Book of Awakening, the Mark talks about how life is like making tea. So just like you would pour water over the dried leaves, dried herbs, you pour your attention over the bits of your daily life. And then just like you would steep in the heat of that water, your sincerity is the heat. How intense is your sincerity is how hot the water would be. Because being sincere about something, really looking at something with sincerity, with curiosity, without judgment, helps you look at it clearly, helps you really steep it in that awareness. And then you have to be patient. In that patience, it brews. You don't have to figure things out. There's a lot of times we just need to sit with something and let it work its way through us, through our bodies and the emotion. And then when we're back kind of to a more regulated nervous system state, then our cognitive functions are on clearer, and we can kind of work through the stories we told ourselves while we were in that state, because we tell ourselves a story in our nervous system state, whatever it is. So the same situation might look different if you're in a state of, if your nervous system is in a state of depression, grieving, fight, flight. It's going to look at a situation differently than if it were in a state of connection. And it will tell a different story depending on what state it's in. And those stories can come from something in your past. They can come from all sorts of places. And that's where you stay curious and you ask, where is this story coming from? Is it true? And if it is not true, what am I gaining from keeping it? What am I losing if I get rid of it or I let it go? All sorts of questions you can ask yourself if you stay in a state of curiosity rather than a state of judgment. And you allow just the living of daily life to be like a tea. And you can find all sorts of moments. I just had one not too long ago where it was just seemed like something so insignificant. It caught the trigger and I stayed curious. I sat with it. I allowed myself to feel anger and sadness and over something so small, but yet it worked through some things for me. And then I'll work through it a little bit more next time it's triggered. And I've learned something about myself and about my nervous system, my programming, and I can work to reprogram. This is living intentionally. That's the pouring of your attention on your daily life with sincerity. Like I really wanted to see what's going on here, staying curious, and then having lots of patience and compassion for yourself. That's a good message for today. In Jesus Calling, the quote that I have pulled from today's reading is this: modern man seeks his positive focus elsewhere, meaning elsewhere from Jesus. In sports, sensations, acquiring new possessions. No doubt this is true, actually. She goes on to say, advertising capitalizes on the longing of people for a positive focus in their lives. Also, I would agree. I, meaning Jesus, planted that longing in human souls, knowing that only I could fully satisfy it. It says, delight yourself in me, let me become the desire of your heart. So interesting. I remember hearing when I was in Christianity that God put a God-shaped hole in your life. God-shaped vacuum, God-shaped hole, whatever. Only he could fill it, right? First of all, why would you put something lacking in your child that they would need you? Why wouldn't you just be there? If you can put anything, just put yourself there. Why do you have to give them lack in order to seek you out instead of be there and help them become aware of it? Which is actually what I think the real story is the divine is always with you. Never have you been separated, and you become aware of it. Not, oh, now he comes. Once you believe it, then he'll fill you. That's just a sense of lack, and it creates an us versus them mentality. We have him. We've filled our God-shaped holes, and you have not. But I do agree that people they're seeking ways of coping or dealing with life, finding happiness. But there's a point to that. You need to be able to look outward first. And once you get to the point of, I cannot find what I'm looking for outside of anywhere, you get to that point, and then you look inward and you find it inward. That's what it's supposed to be. Not that only Jesus can fill it, that it's only found within. And finally, for my utmost for his highest, the quote from today is, am I constantly humiliating God by ignoring him while he lovingly continues to treat me as his child? Once I finally do hear him, the humiliation I have heaped on him returns to me. And then he goes on to say, but our real delight in finally hearing him is tempered with the shame we feel for having taken so long to do so. I feel like would be an abusive parent, very manipulative parent that would do this, that would want the shame to be heaped onto the child because the child, and he makes it sound like he says we don't consciously and deliberately disobey God. We simply don't listen to him. That God's given his commandments and we don't pay attention to them. And you know what? There is no way to know that the Bible is from a true God because there's other scriptures. Only way you would think that way is if you were born into a country or to a family that thought that in the first place. So those are the privileged ones, I guess. That's how they feel anyways. And yet other religions think they have it. So it's not like God is clear. How can you know? He doesn't talk from a burning bush. He doesn't, use a pillar of fire or split seas in half like he did supposedly in the past. So there's no way to know if it's God or not. If he was still doing things like that and talking clearly, like from the mountaintop down and people could hear him and it was thundering and lightning, and I think a lot more people would believe. So this is ridiculous. And to say that you've been humiliating God, how is God being humiliated? Humiliation means somebody else is seeing you as, perceiving you in a way, I guess, that humiliates you or makes you feel shame. Like God can't feel shame. He's God. Who's he feeling shamed in front of? And that once you finally believe, he's like, it's almost like an I told you so. I don't like this idea. And this creates a very different mindset than a lot of Christians would probably want to say that Jesus has. But some would agree. I've been to churches both that would agree or disagree with this. So which one of those is correct? I don't know. It's this just creates a mindset of it's all my fault and God's just perfect and unreachable. So that's the 3 books. Choose what you will from them. I really think the Book of Life was beautiful today, and I'm taking that with me. So have a great day. Remember, you get to decide what you devote your thinking to today. You might not be able to control every thought that comes in, but you can definitely decide what you entertain. And whether it comes from something I've said today or something completely different, choose wisely and set an intention that truly benefits you and those around you. And if you found any value here today, don't forget to like and follow. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and let's keep our minds on what helps us love ourselves and each other a little bit better every day.